Hi, and welcome once again to What's the Damage, companion show to the incredibly well-known and popular real play D&D show Roll for Damage. The heat is finally on in my apartment, so for once I can actually wear my excellent shirt, which I got from our wonderful store, which is very soft and would make a great last-minute Christmas present. Ahem. Check out our store. Okay, so on Friday, the Shields of Twilight made it back to town with a bunch of meat in their bag. Luckily, bags of holding are airtight, so it didn't go bad on the way. And they were inducted into the Desert Rose. Now, any episode that starts with joining a cool desert gang is a good one. And things got more exciting from there, featuring embarrassing wild magic incidents, Lex being annoyed as usual, and a very generous goat. We'll be talking about all of that and some more right now. Then we'll be doing a deep dive into gods and mythology in 5e. Stick around. As always, stick around after the stream for links and resources. I'm your host, Truth Venson, and this is What's the Damage? Welcome back. Joining me today is the wonderful Laura, back once again, as always playing Peregrine, our favorite druid. And then I've got Tick, who plays Cindric, our favorite barbarian. And they're joining me today to talk about nerd shit. So you guys are all back from the mountain. You're up a gang membership and down a communicator. You made friends with a goat who turned out to be a goat. What's the damage?
Huh. That was a lot. Like a lot. I do not know where to start.
Well, I mean, it wasn't all bad, at least.
No, it was pretty good.
Most of it was pretty good.
I think all of it was pretty good, actually.
Well, that's because Tick got to sit at the bar. Tick, your character got to sit at the bar, not accidentally suffocate people, or be one of the people that my character accidentally suffocated.
Well, you learned something, so that's good. And we had our crutch taken away from us, so that's good, too.
Yeah.
It'll help grow. I mean,
I agree.
There was a no lose in this episode.
Yeah, actually, since that was one of the things I want to talk about, let's jump right into that. How do you guys feel, your characters specifically, about having the communicator confiscated from you guys?
He
Feel good about
definitely
it.
does. Yeah. Perry
Yeah, did you see
thinks
that coming?
I didn't necessarily see it coming so much as I felt like it was definitely deserved, and Perry 100% thinks it was definitely deserved. And is kind of glad to not have like something to fall back on, because they've been kind of afraid to call Liz or Lex since the incident. And so they've done well enough on their own So Perry's like, look, we can handle this. If it's a dire emergency, people have got sending. We'll be okay. But we really need to stop racking up debt and stand on our own feet.
I don't think it's a matter of racking up debt, but it's a matter of we have that get out of jail free card. We never do things on our own accord. We always call someone to do something for us. So it's not a matter of the debt per se.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I agree, but Perry's like, part of it is like, she just kept seeing like, we're racking up all these favors and we're not doing enough good for it to be warranted. We're relying on others to do what we should be able to do ourselves, with the exception of having to call in somebody for an emergency resurrection. Like, that was something we couldn't do ourselves. We couldn't bring him back. So for Perry, it's just like, we need to be independent. We are our own team, and if we don't start acting like we're our own team and doing things ourselves, we're not going to get anywhere or be able to be successful. Not truly.
Your little baby birds getting pushed out of the nest.
I mean, kicked
Shoved
out with
out, like,
steel-toed
fine.
boot, but you know.
Fine little birds, fine. Yeah.
See, I was more curious onto the wording, the whole, like, maybe, you know, along the lines of, well, like, understand what, or we don't understand what that device really is. So leading to maybe it's something more than just like calling someone.
Intriguing. I hadn't actually thought of that.
So it's just
Maybe.
the way the wording was. I'm probably looking too much into it, but
you also might not be. Maybe it'll come back later. Okay, yeah, so kind of speaking of debts, are your characters relieved to have paid off your debt to the city? How do your characters kind of like view that?
indifferent.
Cynric.
I mean,
Cynric.
well, no. In all seriousness, I mean,
Sinbin.
Yes, you did wrong on one hand, and then you did good. I mean, yeah, it didn't feel like that big of a growth for my character as far as like making that moral choice, because I'm not exactly opposed to killing people. But on the same time, you know, yeah, you went out and you did something good, and now you have the obligation to continue doing good while you're in the area. So, I mean, yeah, I get why we were doing it, and I get why it was a smart decision.
I think Perry doesn't think that. Well, I know she doesn't think that they're done paying their debt. Like, for her, like, this is a debt that's not ever going to be really fully repaid. It's like she said multiple times to Campion, the punishment for theft should not be death. And it was not up to them to decide whether these people lived or died. There was another solution. They failed to, you know, think of it or do it. And so part of her is a little bit relieved to have started to make amends. But it's one of those things where I think it's going to be a while before she really believes that they've truly made amends, or she personally has, for what happened.
I must say, it's really interesting to see like your character's very different perspectives on this, because I feel like Peregrine is sort of driven by her sense of duty towards many different things, whereas Cinder's a bit more of a very pragmatic character, actually, I think. Yeah, and I think your characters don't talk that much, so it would be really interesting to see you have this discussion in character. Don't let me influence you. Don't do that just because I said so.
It's kind of like, I don't want to say polar opposites, but definitely different wavelengths.
So, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Fascinating. Okay, so how do your characters feel about becoming part of the Desert Rose? Because like, not only did you repay your debt, however much debt you think you had, You also kind of got something out of it. You got membership to an organization who has some people who you already know in it. It seems pretty widespread, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, Perry doesn't like have a very specific feeling about joining. I love all kinds of like little things like that, and I found it really fun and interesting to be like, oh, wait, Lux Eterna's in here too. What did they do, or did they voluntarily join up? But for Perry, it's just like part of what we're doing now. So she doesn't have like a really strong feeling about it. She's happy to be there and do good and do whatever needs to be done. But she's not really like emotionally involved or attached to the idea that, oh, we've joined this organization.
I kind of think they're bigger than what they lead on to be.
Yeah, Laura thinks so too. Perry doesn't know anything.
So Cindric's just kind of, I don't know, biding his time to find out what the deeper mystery is, or is he just kind of like going with the flow, being like, things will come up when they come up?
The terms of the arrangement is when we're in, Cageborough, we're to help the Desert Rose, and I don't foresee us coming back here too often. So I'm okay with it as a character right now.
He's like, why not?
It's like a free get out of jail card with how it's presented right now. I mean, I think, like, as far as character-wise, I think Campion would probably have the most likely odds of returning to this town before any of us would have a need to, per se. So it was the smartest option for him to join up, because it would benefit, like, his hunts and stuff like that. Not just, being welcomed again. Yeah.
For professional reasons. Okay, neat. Yeah, so Perry, you got to spend some more time with your buddy, Fulton, who helped you get better in touch with some of your magical abilities.
Yeah. So I personally have no idea what's happening to Perry right now. I have some inklings. But like when I was creating this character, I mean, I purposely leave holes in my bio for the DM, especially because Serenity does so well with filling in those holes with both trauma and intrigue.
She's a monster.
So I'm really excited to see where that's going to lead. And it was really fun and exciting to start to like really like pick at that area. Because when I was creating this character, Serenity and I talked about, she asked me some questions about like, hey, can we tweak this about your bio? It'll make you feed into the story more. And I was like, sure, I trust you. Let's do this. Let's torment my character a little bit and give her room to grow. And this is like a big place for her to grow. She hasn't necessarily been hidebound or tradition bound, because she left home and was just like, look, y'all, we can't stay here and do nothing. But she's still been just, I am a druid. My job is to take care of nature and the world, and my job is to protect nature. And all of a sudden she's realizing I'm not just a druid, and I don't know what I am, and I don't know why I am, but there's something more to me. Mm-hmm. And that's really exciting. Also, suddenly name dropping one of her brothers, one of her many, many brothers.
Fun times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's happening mechanically is Perry is multi-classing sorcerer, right? Confirming?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay.
No, we've talked about some stuff. I'm not going to say what we've talked about. But one thing that Serenity is really great about is communication. Like if we're going to be doing stuff with the character and we're going to be developing things, she doesn't spring stuff on you in a way that's going to make you like feel like you have to hurt your character or change what you want about your character or anything else. Like we really talk about it. So we've talked about some stuff, but I have no idea what's going on yet. And I'm happy to not know, because then it's more fun to be like in the moment. All of a sudden she's just like, roll a D100.
Let's see what happens.
I don't know what number to pray for now. Whatever it is going to be wild. So we don't know. I personally don't know, and I'm excited to find out.
I think we're all very excited to find out what the heck's going on with you.
The last one was pretty fun.
Was pretty interesting.
Was it fun?
Yeah.
Is that the word we'd use for sucking the air and gravity out of part of the room?
I mean, it could be useful at some point.
It might be if you can control it, which we'll
You're
find out
surrounded
if
by
you
a
can,
room full of
apparently.
enemies.
That's a really cool spell, actually. Anyway, so why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think this is the first time maybe Perry's like really tried to get in touch with that core of wild magic, and you ended up with something. I don't think anyone died, but there was the real danger of people dying.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time that she's really thought about it outside of occasionally thinking about things like, I remember these times when my magic didn't work right. I remember these times when something weird happened and I don't know why. And then, of course, a lot of bad has happened recently. So the first thing she thinks about is that nightmare that's still very fresh on her mind. And so that was the first thing that she could like zero in on, because I had a million other like happy little moments, but I was like, Perry wouldn't be thinking about those right now. So like for her, it's both exciting to learn new things about herself, but also terrifying, because all she thinks she did was focus in on a nightmare and something that scared her. And all of a sudden something really big and kind of bad happened and she couldn't control it and she couldn't turn it off. So she's really excited to explore that because she keeps thinking about all the things that she was told leading up to this moment, both from, Coralon and from the Emperor himself, who said something about the solution she's looking for not lying with the ways of her people. And that still lingers in her mind because she's still at such a loss. And anytime somebody around her is sick, she's like, is it like, am I seeing it? Is it spreading? Has it left the forest? Because as far as she knows, it has not at least reached other parts of her people that she knows. But like, she's always looking for like, is someone else experiencing it? And so getting in touch with the thing that has been told might lead to the answer is really exciting, but also scary for her.
Imagine it would be. And Cedric was just having fun at the bar.
Cedric just got to drink and
I was at the table watching. I believe I did volunteer to help get people out after I left.
And a show.
I mean, they weren't going to die after suffocating for a couple seconds.
True enough.
Fair.
Okay. What's the question I wanted to ask? There's something else, but I think I forgot to write it down. That's fine. It will come to me eventually. So can we talk about your new goat friend for a second? Oh wait, no. We had to hit pause on the goat. I just remembered what I wanted to ask you about. So Fulton gave Perry a present of sorts.
Yes.
The flowers. Yeah, I feel like Peregrine has been sort of caught up in a lot of things, and perhaps this is part of her desire not to have any more debts, since that sort of like makes the party go places and do things. She hasn't really been able to concentrate perhaps as much as she wants to on her own shit. So with these flowers, does she see like, is this reigniting the passion for her to save her people?
I mean, I wouldn't say that passion has really gone anywhere so much as she realizes that she can't solve this immediately. And she's not the kind of person who puts herself first. But it has given her like a little bit of inspiration and a goal now that she knows like, okay, well, I have these flowers and they're located near where the tribes are. It's given her something to look for, and that's kind of given her more direction, because all she has is this story about where the tribes are located, but those locations aren't actually anything she understands. So giving her direction is really helpful. Like now she knows, okay, well, we might be headed into the jungle. I'm looking for a tribe that lives in the jungle. Maybe I'll look for that flower. One of these flowers has got to be somewhere around.
You've got something a little bit more concrete to go off of.
Because she hasn't had a concrete lead.
Now you've got several. Yay. Jazz hands. Okay. Now we can talk about the goat. I want to talk about the goat so bad. So that was really fun.
Yeah.
I feel like there's been a lot of talking to animals in this game. This is the first time it's really paid off.
Yeah.
If you're a druid and you don't talk to animals, you're doing it wrong.
I mean, it's mostly Oriana talking to animals.
It's fair.
True. I mean, one of my goals was to make Perry less cliche of a druid. So like at first I was like, I don't want to have Perry talk to this goat. I feel like that's just real on the nose, and it's gonna be like one of those things where, well, look at the druid go. But then I was like, there's a goat literally following us. Literally following us. And so she doesn't necessarily have speak with animals prepped all the time, but she does have that ring. So she's like, well, yeah, sure. And, I personally love it when you get to talk to animals or plants, and it's always something like really ridiculous, and they always have really great voices and don't understand why you're talking to them. So it was really exciting for this one to actually like be excited that we're talking to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I still want to know what it really was.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, so you guys have any theories as to who Walad is really? I have my own theories, but I'm not going to tell you them.
Some kind of genie. Jinn.
I'm leaning real hard on Jinn too. But
although knowing our previous encounter, it's probably one of the gods that's trying to fight for one of our souls.
Turns up as a goat?
You never know.
I mean,
you know, I guess. Could be one of those trickster ones.
I mean, it could be. I mean, I lean real hard on Jinn just because it makes sense. And of course, Perry didn't think to insight check a goat. It's just not a thing that she thought to do. I would like to insight check this goat. So she's just like, well, it's a goat and it says it used to be a person. Can we make it a person again?
Checks out.
Especially when I got really upset when we were trying to take that medallion off. So I mean, I don't think it was one of the gods, because unless we were being somehow tested.
The goat. I mean, why not at this point? But
I mean, stranger things have happened.
You never know.
Campaign.
I mean, it could have been just like a random reward or, something like that given, or opportunity, I should say. Or it could have had like a deeper meaning at some point.
Could be both.
I mean, I did write that name down because it could be an anagram, and I will spend some time while we're not.
Wait, what was his full name? It was Walad something.
Aldine.
Walad Aldine. Cute.
I will spend some of Christmas vacation flipping through that note and like looking and seeing, can I no, I will look at it for a minute though, seriously, because I love a puzzle, to see if I can make it another name.
Interesting. You're going to end up with like a fully formed word, which is going to have nothing to do with the puzzle. It's going to be a complete accident.
Yeah, it'll be completely irrelevant, but it will be a word. No, I'm going to spend my Christmas vacation doing nothing.
Sounds nice.
Someone's phone was ringing.
It was not my phone.
It was mine. I was getting a phone call. It's on vibrate.
Dare you? We are filming right now. We are live. This is in front of a live studio audience.
No, I'll do it when we're done.
Awesome. So do you guys think you picked the best of the three options? Seems like you're pretty happy with it.
I know Perry doesn't. I kind of think logically it was one of the best options because it really benefited all of us. I know Perry was thinking like we have a lot to do, and there's no guarantee that like we would get to Zuma and be able to come back and get a straight shot to River End where we wanted to go. What if we have to like track all the way around and like we're like 6 weeks out or something? Because you know they do have really pressing matters. And she thinks about things like she knows that Melody is worried about her family in a trail. And, you know, we were specifically, you know, bombs might be headed to River End. And family matters to Perry. Like, she really wants to help Melody, like, not lose her family because Perry is in constant fear that she's not going to make it back home in time and she's going to lose family. And then just me personally, it buys us time to get other things done and to explore a little bit more, because then we get there, we finish, and if we're ready to go, we go, provided we haven't been tricked by a djinn.
Nice djinn or a feet, who knows, or Dow, probably not Marid. Anyway, Tick, what do you think?
I just want to say this popped into my head when she was talking. Family seems to tie back into a lot of what we're doing.
It really does, doesn't it?
Yep.
Actually, I think that might increase the chance of Sinric having a secret child, since it's a theme now. It's thematic.
I mean, I'm running away from mine. Everyone else is running from theirs or to theirs.
Or to save theirs, yeah.
You know?
Man, family.
But yeah, the goat, I mean, me as a person's looking too much into it to a point where it's like maybe the right choice was to help the guy and then not ask for a reward. But on the same token, I think we made the smart decision as far as like the rewards offered, the teleportation. Although, you know, asking a random item would have been super invaluable.
That's true.
I mean, we could have asked for something, you know, really powerful.
Maybe it would have been a teleportation item. Who knows? Hey. Okay.
Now we won't know.
Well, you'll never know. Oh well, this is D&D. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our topic for the day, which is drumroll gods. Speaking of gods, we've mentioned them a lot, and they're very relevant to your story right now, and also mythology. So 5e has a pretty extensive pantheon, one could say, with very detailed history, feuds, wars, alliances, deaths, cannibalism, some incest, god stuff, you know. So how familiar are you two with like the ins and outs of just like baseline mythology in 5e? Because there's a lot of it.
I mean, I'm pretty much where I want to say I'm like middle ground. I don't go to a point where I like go out and read all about it, but it's to the point where I know where the resources are. So if I have a question about something, I can just pull it up and read it. Because as you said, there's a lot of it.
Yeah, I'm kind of about there too. I'm kind of in the process of building out the world around the module I'm going to be running soon. And, you know, hoping to like homebrew outside of it. So like I've done a lot of like picking at the research. And of course I have some, because I play a cleric in another game, I'm like deeply aware of the lore of that specific god. Because the Raven Queen is my favorite. But I mean, I don't know, like I couldn't recite stuff off the top of my head, but I do know enough to get by.
Yeah, I think I have a good way to tell. Can either of you explain to me what the spell plague is? I don't get it.
No.
It was a really fun chapter in the what was it, the Neverwinter game, actually. The way it not interacted, but kind of like shaped the what was the king, or it was part of Neverwinter. The way it shaped all the tunnels and turn people into like weird creatures, and yeah, that's about
Interesting.
But that was from a
Okay.
video game. But it was still D&D.
Oh, it's from a video game. Okay.
Yeah, it was from the was it Neverwinter? It was a Neverwinter game, something like that. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep. You had to
Neverwinter
follow.
Nights, apparently.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You had to follow the
says
character
the base
around,
mythology is based off of Forgotten Realms, apparently.
and they had cool blue glowing eyes.
Ooh, okay. The eyes make it cool. This whole plague is cool now, just because the eyes. Awesome. Okay. So do you guys have a favorite god? I know Laura just mentioned the Raven Queen, who is, I think, generally considered to be a coolish god.
I'd have to say, Moradin at that point, because I'm short myself, stout myself, facial hair, like to
So you
drink
just
in real
identify
life.
with him? You just
Yeah,
identify
exactly.
with him?
Exactly.
Nick has modeled himself after Moradin. It's just like that's his aesthetic now.
Mm.
I just wish the beard would get longer.
You'll get there.
Believe
in you. You just gotta pray for it, man. You gotta have faith. Awesome. Yeah. So tell me, Laura, why the Raven Queen, if that is your favorite god?
I mean, it's kind of a tie between her and Melora. Melora, because I am a nature nerd. And a filthy hippie. But I enjoy the Raven Queen because I enjoy the idea of someone who is once mortal who decided, fuck it, I'm gonna be a god. And she sort of like has this sort of no fucks given, like I like the idea of, because I don't believe in like fate and stuff on my own, but I like the idea of there is a, this is how the world works, and this is balance, and you don't mess with it, and you don't try to corrupt the path. I think specifically one of my things is like I've always tried to, as a person, accept that death is a part of life. Because it is the best way I've found for dealing with my own personal grief. Anytime I have lost a loved one, that is one of the things that has gotten me through. And so I like the idea of a god who represents, okay, well, there is an end point. That's just part of the process. And that is sort of one of the reasons that I was super drawn to the Raven Queen. Also, she just has a really great spooky aesthetic. And I am a spooky person sometimes.
Awesome. So do you guys tend to play religious characters, or is it like half and half, more a-religious usually?
For me, it's kind of weird to play a religious character because, I mean, you have to gauge like how tied are they to like a specific belief or religion, and it kind of feels like you back yourself into a corner, especially when you play things like paladins, and you have like a party with someone that does something that is morally against what they do, and it creates tension amongst parties.
Yeah.
If you want to stay like that focused to being in character.
Is that necessarily a product of religion, though? Isn't that just a strong moral code?
Could be. But don't paladins, like they kind of use almost divine favor for their magic in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, you can have oath breakers, you can have evil paladins, you can have neutral paladins, you can have paladins in every flavor.
Yeah.
True.
I am not a person who has a lot of like blind faith, and I wouldn't consider myself like personally a particularly religious person, but I do play a very devout cleric of the Raven Queen. She's not blindly faithful, and yeah, it can cause sort of like a little bit of tension in the party, but that tension's often like really good for character exploration, because in that particular game, there's like a lot of tension between some party members who are like, well, no, the gods are stupid. And there's sort of like an ongoing thing right now where a former cleric of the Raven Queen has now like started working with, or has been working with Dune, and there's this like literal conflict between the character that I am playing and one of our actual villains, and they're like constantly duking it out over like what it means to have faith, and like they do literally have a "my god is better than your god" fight because she's following Dune and I'm following the Raven Queen.
You got a narrative foil. That's very fun.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dichotomy, because like I'm playing someone who has a lot of faith, dealing with someone who literally lost their faith in the god that I follow. But like you do have to sort of decide: are you going to play someone who is blindly devoted and who's never going to waver, or are you going to play someone who can accept like, okay, well, I don't have the only perspective, and the growth from that blind faith to that perspective is also a lot of fun to play with. Like the realization that you can't always, or your faith may not always be rewarded. Bad things will still possibly happen, and have happened to you. So I think it's really fun. I don't have a lot of trouble playing it. I only have the one cleric. And Perry believes in Melora but isn't super religious. So I find it kind of fun to play with the idea of like super, super faithful, and really interesting to explore that like level of character.
Awesome. Personally, I like playing religious characters. I think they're so fun. I'm not religious at all, so it's like completely different than what I do every day. Cool beans. Okay, so can you guys tell me a bit about like when you're playing a religious character, a bit about the process of picking out a god for the character to worship? Like at what point during creation do you decide? Does it depend on the character entirely? Because that's like a very important and personal decision for a character who they worship.
I think the first step would be like look at the setting of what you're playing. And then you can go from there, whether it's like building out like what part of the world you're in, where your character is going to be coming from, why your character is there. And then you can kind of go back and like fit in the pieces of, oh yeah, well, I mean, this deity here would be like the best representation of what my character is.
Yeah. I start sort of with faith and in like a generic sense, like what do they believe in, and kind of go from there. Like when I designed my cleric, my idea was, what if I make basically a cotton candy goth?
Nice.
Put her on a path to follow God that's not all sunshine and roses, where she has to accept like death is a natural thing, and everything is covered in black feathers, but she's pink and she's bubbly and she's happy all the time, and she's looking for happiness and to make people happy and to do good. And so I enjoyed the idea of what if I just made the pinkest goth ever. But I think Tick makes a good point about like thinking about like where your character comes from and who they are as a person, because if you start, it's kind of boxing yourself in if you start with, okay, well, I want a character who worships Melora, and now you're in this box depending on the world you're setting in. If you're not in a place where you're in a setting where your gods are really nuanced, you're kind of trapped, and you're not going to get much room to grow or develop your character to begin with.
Interesting.
I think we kind of see a little bit of that with Quinn, although it's we're playing with a different understanding of what the gods are in this game. So I mean that takes it to a different aspect altogether. But as far as like being introduced as I'm a cleric of Melora first and foremost, you kind of start to see a little bit of that.
Yeah, actually, that's a good segue into something I want to talk about. So, what do you guys think in general about what Serenity's been doing so far with gods and religion on Friday? Because we've, with Quinn, quite a bit,
Hmm.
and with Oriana a little bit, gotten a peek behind the curtain, and with Perry too. A lot of you, there's a lot of God stuff. We got a
There's a
peek
lot of
behind
God
the
stuff.
curtain, and it seems less cut and dry than you'd think. Like you've got that dichotomy of Quinn, you've got whatever is going to happen with Oriana. We'll see. Thoughts?
I mean, it's a polar opposite for even Oriana. I mean, well, is it a polar opposite?
Is it a polar opposite? We don't.
I don't think so.
I think it's, yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same choice, but which road do you want to take to get there?
Mm-hmm.
I love how nuanced the mythology is. And I also am kind of living for the active gods, the gods that show up and actually give a fuck. They're not out somewhere where they don't really matter and it's just your faith and that's it. The idea that Bane came and fucked with us, that Asmodeus is taunting Melody a little bit because she's been not so great. I really like that we don't know enough to really have an educated opinion yet, and that it is up to us to look for that. Because a lot of mythology and 5e mythology in general is really kind of black and white. You have, these are your good gods and these are your bad gods. And if you follow these bad gods, you are a bad person. And I really like that in Iotonia, it's different. Yeah, okay, well, Bane is technically a destroyer, but is he evil? No.
I mean, it's one of those where it's like a forest fire, will devastate a forest, but it still allows for the new growth to come back, come in underneath it. I mean, it's not a black and white equation. It's, choices and what consequence do those choices hold, more so than, destroyer bad, not destroyer good. Well, creator, but.
Whatever the opposite of destroying is.
I don't know. I kind of like not destroyer and not creator gods. Well, I mean, and I say this because like that kind of sets up like most of us walking in, we're just like, these are the destroyers and these are the creators and these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. And we need to, be good or bad. And that's not how the world works. Just because they're labeled one way. I mean, there are some, Thuris Dune, thoroughly bad.
Or so you think.
I mean,
he could be the forest fire the world needs. You never know.
Oh, that's sounding real apocalyptic. Okay.
I wouldn't go that far. But like there are some that like we're clearly that's a problematic god over there. But we don't know enough to make a decision. And the assumptions we make lead to mistakes and lead us down roads that maybe we don't want to go down or didn't anticipate going down. I mean, we saw what happened when, Oriana assumed that she knew everything about Aeon and was
Except
going.
Who she actually was. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Hey.
I mean, Perry said it several times about how do you spell assume, and what happens when you assume. But like we've seen where our assumptions will take us, and it's for a lot of us, it's time to start thinking about how much of those assumptions are wrong and what we can learn from that.
Very exciting. We'll find out more. Okay, so sort of like zooming back out to all of 5e. One thing that I've always found a little cognitive dissonancy was the reality of having non-religious characters in a universe where gods are definitely real and prone to meddling. Is there still room for like atheism within this universe? Like, how do you reconcile that? If you just want to play a character who's just not religious, do they have to be a staunch enemy of the gods? Is this what atheism is?
I mean, that's
be a cool character, but like.
Yeah, I think, I mean, even that kind of goes more into like non D&D stuff, but I mean, as far as like in the D&D realm, I mean, you don't have to necessarily believe in a deity to be, you know, a character. I mean, I guess even going like the, what was it, the Forgotten Realms lore would be Jarlaxle kind of comes to mind, where he wasn't exactly like for Loth, but you know, still kind of did his own thing. So I mean, it's possible, but
I mean, I think it boils down to faith or not faith rather than belief. Because you can, in 5e, it's kind of your character kind of, they don't have to have faith in any of the gods at all. But to say, well, I don't believe in gods. But
Radical statement.
But I've never come across a character who literally didn't believe in gods. Any gods. Now,
God denialism.
Yeah, this idea of denying that the gods exist is a really intriguing one for me, because when you encounter that, you have to sit there and think, but the gods are real. We have actual evidence. It's not like here where you have to believe in miracles to believe.
You don't need that much faith in D&D to be religious. You don't really need any faith at all.
In the broader sense, though, I mean, you say like there's evidence of, you know, it's like the deities in like the realm, but I mean, I would argue we're looking at that in the sense of an adventure being part of a story. But if you shift focus to, say, you know, that farmer or that fisherman who has never seen some of the things that an adventurer would, or, you know, never even left their village, it's an interesting question, because yeah, you could have someone that technically doesn't believe in the gods because they're in their little tiny bubble of the world and has never been exposed to anything that's outside of what they know.
That had not occurred to me, and that's fascinating. I think we tend to
think
forget there are non-PC characters in the universe.
You tend to forget that NPCs exist. If they're not critical NPCs. You know, these no-name NPCs do exist and do have their own lives. We just don't see them.
Atheist farmer.
That is now an NPC in every game. You just don't know about them.
You may meet him, you might not meet him. He's there, though.
You never know. Could be raising some horses for someone to come along and, you know, take.
Yeah, you'd steal this poor guy's. Now he super doesn't believe in God. Poor guy. Okay, awesome. So when you are either running or designing a campaign, how much do you think about the impact of religion on the setting? And this is just you guys personally. Since religion is, for good or bad, one of the driving forces of most civilizations.
It's a compelling, you know, vehicle to tell a story, and it's something that could be used to kind of define like a moral compass for an overall story point. So I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's
I mean, I don't think you can. It's one of those things where you can't ignore it, because religion and faith, whether it's vital or not, is still an element that is significant, because you're gonna have clerics, maybe. If there's not a cleric in your party, they're probably gonna run across one, because gods exist. And the gods have been such a driving force in the mythos, even if you're not doing a homebrew setting. Well, like me personally, that's one of the things I want to lay out before I start is, what are the gods like? What, you know, because D&D is like a weirdly, I don't want to say faith-based or faith-centric, but like faith as a element is so important for building a lot of stuff. Like, because the gods exist and actually do things and actually did do things. So like I want to know like how they relate, because somebody always asks. And I don't want to make that up on the spot, because what if I'm feeling particularly shitty and I just make some shit up that doesn't make any sense and now I'm bound to it? Well,
Here we are.
Here we are.
Yes,
this god now
world.
does this.
Yeah.
All the universe is merely a carrot that the cosmic bunny is nibbling on. That's why stuff sucks, because we're on a carrot. Silly being eaten by the cosmic bunny. Okay.
And that just became canon. So put that in your campaign notes. Thorstoon is a bunny.
Thorstoon is the cosmic bunny.
Eating Eotonia.
He's very adorable but quite evil. Or new.
Yes.
Cosmic bunny poo.
Oh my god. Okay. So you're both. So we're all like medium familiar with all of the much lore, the much god lore. Do you guys enjoy all of that lore? Because I feel like most of it gets unused. And Laura, something you said about D&D being like a very religious-based gaming system, I'm not sure. Kind of that, but I also feel like the gods and the religions have been given a lot of development, like more development than some other areas of D&D maybe.
Well, the gods are almost treated, well, they are treated as characters in the scope of the game.
It's very Greek mythology-y, where the gods are like, meddlers. They're really meddly.
As far as like reading,
but they have less sex. They have less sex than they do in Greek mythology.
That you know of.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know about it. Okay.
I think, they're.
Serenity has told us 2 ways. There's
definitely a lot of interest in reading about the lore. Whether it makes it all into settings and campaigns is a whole nother, situation. But yeah, there's so much lore out there on all the gods and everything. And yeah, I mean, one of my favorites actually reading the the first couple of books from the that they published about Loth and their society and stuff like that, just because it gets to be interesting on how the gods react to things. Well, this particular god, but
I do agree with you though, Truth. I feel like the gods got a ton of development, and then the towns, didn't get built out so much. Create your own city, but these are the gods.
I mean, was that done to give it like a platform for people to kind of have like, okay, this is like the overall scope of the world, but we're not going to say, this shop is in like E3 of this town.
Right.
So, I mean, I think they kind of deliberately left that vague as far as the scope of the game, so people can fill that in as they go.
That makes sense, but I feel like religion as not a major part of every campaign, but a decently big part of many campaigns could also have been more vague, because like they do tell you, hey, here's this god, they're evil officially, here's their exact personality and their domain down to like the last grain of sand. It's very specific.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
When I say this city doesn't get developed, I think maybe I should have said like society, because that's what it really seems like doesn't get developed. In like not in general campaigns like homebrew settings, but like in a lot of pre-built 5e stuff that we get, from Wizards. It's all like, well, the finite details about Loth, but you have this cardboard cutout of Drow society. Or, you have all of these minute bits of information about the gods, but build your own dwarves and how their culture works.
Just build a whole dwarf.
And I think that it can lead to one of 2 things. Either you get a really creative DM who takes these itty bitty bits of information that you get, this cardboard cutout of of a specific society and they build it out into something really unique and really interesting, or you get someone who's like, well, this is what the book says. All drow are evil now. Moving on. And I think a lot of it depends on the story you want to tell, because Tick's right, the gods are characters in this story because they've been humanized, for lack of a better word, personified, I guess, in a way that like they're not in real life. Like gods are concepts in a lot of modern religion, but in D&D, gods are people. And they have their own lives. We know things about like, well, these characters, these gods are banging over here, and these gods hate each other.
Here's why.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I guess the better question is, are we going to meet any demigods in this, realm?
I don't know. I saw that chin stroke, so maybe you'll be making some demigods,
Maybe the goat was a demigod.
Maybe.
Hey, maybe. Anyway, we're very excited to see you get involved in all of that crazy stuff. So sort of like going off of some of the themes we were discussing in that last question, D&D obviously takes a lot of inspiration from like IRL myths and mythology, but I've seen it argued on certain parts of the internet that there's kind of an anti-mythology sentiment in the text itself and in the community a little bit, meaning that there isn't a lot of room for myths or legends that are like not immediately true that you can prove or disprove. Sort of like a lack of the mystery, which a lot of us associate with IRL religion and mythology. Do you think this is kind of fair? The fair thing to say, or?
Personally, I think it's bananas and oranges.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and the reason why I say that is in D&D, you're either playing like, a pre-made campaign where things are laid out and a lot of those details become irrelevant because you're so focused down to one thing, or, you play like a broader homebrew scenario where details and liberties get thrown out to fit the story you're telling. I mean, even with the game now, we're looking at relationships between, different gods that are not what, you read about as far as what the lore goes. So, I mean, yeah, in that sense, I think it's bananas and oranges because you write your own. So if you want to write yourself into that corner, then you can, but otherwise you don't have to.
I mean, I think I agree with Tick, and I also think though that there is a lot less like mystery in D&D, and like it's kind of up to you as a storyteller to decide where you're going to put that mystery. And it's almost like because the gods are characters, instead of mythology, you basically have to just create rumors. Like, okay, well, there is this story, you make up a story. There's this story about Asmodeus tricking, Avandra into some sort of deal. Do you know whether that's true or not? No. The DM can know. And you just sort of have to like write your own myths and write your own rumors. And instead, because everything is kind of out there in the open, because the gods are meddlers, you're sort of living inside the mythology as it's happening.
This is the Age of Heroes, kind of like what your campaign is, what's happening right now for most campaigns.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. Do we have any closing thoughts? It's almost time to say goodbye and good night.
Have fun with your stories. Don't be afraid to use your deities. Don't be afraid to, change what they're about. Don't be afraid to take chances and tell stories.
Yeah, I mean, and don't be afraid to make things a lot less black and white than the book says. Because the really interesting stuff is in the shades of gray. And to be honest, that's one of my favorite things about the campaign we're doing right now. The really, really interesting stuff is in the things we don't know and the things we think we know that are probably wrong. So when you're coming up with your mythology for your campaign, don't be afraid to go off book and create your own mythos that has more nuance, because it's going to give you room to write more stories, and it's going to give your characters more room to grow and develop and learn.
Awesome possum. So have fun homebrewing if you want to, but don't worry about it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's our time for tonight. Thank you both for joining me. Thank you to everyone who's watching and who comes back every week to watch us talk about just the most nerdy shit. We appreciate you. Go to our store, go to our Twitch, subscribe to our YouTube, subscribe to our Twitch account, tell your friends. We'd consider that a really great Christmas present for us if you would tell your friends about our streams, because we love doing this. We love entertaining you guys. Do we have, you have game on Friday, right?
Yes.
Do we have? Okay, yeah, next Tuesday is the last What's the Damage before the holidays. There is game on Friday, so tune to that, then tune to here next week. And that's it. Good night. Bye.
Night, y'all.